I'll need your help to get a level. So I need your help to get this level. Okay, am I coming through clearly?
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm happy to be here, helping Turner Classic Movies celebrate an auspicious anniversary. Occasions like this cause me to reflect on my own history with the company and with its films. Growing up in Oakland, California in the 1950s and 60s, I knew of one TV station that carried Warner Brothers titles from what we now call the Golden Era. At the time, though, it seemed like the Warner's titles were outnumbered by Paramount and MGM. At Cal State Hayward in the 70s, we were rediscovering the American cinema. But again, the titles were mostly MGM and the then newly rediscovered Fox Film Corporation titles. An older college friend was shocked that I had never seen Casablanca. When I came to graduate school at the University of Southern California, all this changed. It was 1973. Warner Brothers was celebrating its 50th anniversary. USC Cinema School was entrusting students Ben Burt and Mario Bikurstan with a film series dedicated to director Michael Curtiz. This is nothing like the series I had mounted in Hayward with 16mm rental prints from Films Incorporated. This was the real thing, with 35mm nitrate prints from the Burbank vaults. Before long, I was going into the projection booth, carrying a slide copier and making frame enlargements from titles like Mildred Pierce. If you want to study film, take this advice: do it frame by frame. Seriously though, my purpose was to make prints to show veteran cinematographers like Lee Garms and James Wong Howe, so I could learn how they lit certain shots. When Casablanca was screened, I found a seat near the front of the auditorium. 2 rows in front of me was a deeply tan, very spry old man. He looked familiar. When he stood up to acknowledge applause, I recognized Jack L. Warner. I wish I could have asked him about One Way Passage, but I hadn't seen it. I didn't see it until 1988, the same year my first book was published, when One Way Passage was broadcast on Turner Network Television, TNT, along with thousands of movies that I've read about for decades, but never been able to see. Articles appeared talking about TNT's resurrection of Kay Francis, and I say, God bless Ted Turner. And big thanks to Warner Discovery, Warner Archives, and specifically George Feltenstein, because we'll be able to buy a Blu-ray copy of One Way Passage in 12 days. One Way Passage was a popular film in 1932 and early 33, since it came out in October, competing with Smilin' Through, a monster hit, The Sign of the Cross, Farewell to Arms, and last but not least, Call Her Savage. This film confirmed the stardom of both William Powell and Kay Francis, and it remains important for a number of reasons, but it was an unlikely hit. The typical Warner Brothers film in the first years of the Depression was either a historical pageant starring George Arliss, or a topical urban film starring James Cagney or Edward G. Robinson. But the audience was increasingly made up of women, reaching a high of 75% in 1931. Jack Warner saw the need to please that sector. When Paramount was slow to renew the contracts of 3 major stars, Warner swooped in and grabbed them. What Ruth Chatterton, William Powell, and Kay Francis meant to Warner Brothers was the opportunity to create a line of women's pictures, formerly the specialty of MGM and Paramount. Unlike most Warner's projects, this one did not originate in a novel or a play. It came from an original outline by a Warner's writer named Robert Lord. He'd come from Harvard via Broadway and William Fox's company, so his story was a good one. Jack Warner assigned various writers to expand on it without luck. They couldn't see the value in a story about a condemned murderer and a fatally ill society woman. Story editor and big boss Darryl F. Zanuck had the bright idea of turning it over to Tay Garnett, who had started his filmland career 10 years earlier as a writer for both Max Sennett and Hal Roach. Garnett took the outline along on a trip and worked feverishly on it, which did not please his wife, the actress Patsy Ruth Miller. When Warner's got excited and called Garnett back to Warner's, his wife destroyed the manuscript.
Wow.
Back in Burbank, Garnett engaged 2 typists and dictated for 14 hours from memory what he'd written. Zanuck liked the story, so 2 contract writers were assigned to work with Garnett. Joe Jackson had written numerous talkie hits for Warner, including Safe in Hell, which also comes out on Blu-ray. To get our plugs in. There was also a well-known character, a San Francisco gambler, a scalawag, and a raconteur named Wilson Misner. In writing sessions, Misner would lie on a sofa, throw out jokes and running gags, and fall asleep. Lord would then add those bits to the story. Misner would suddenly wake up and supply a perfect cap to each gag. When production head Hal Wallace asked Garnett if he wanted a credit, he declined because he didn't want to push his luck on his first Warner's film. He would later regret this.
Yeah.
This was the 5th and final film to co-star William Powell and Kay Francis. It was the 4th film of Hollywood newcomer Aline McMahon, who had made a Broadway hit as a cynical voice coach in the Moss Hart and George S. Kaufman play, Once in a Lifetime. These performers joined cast and crew in San Pedro, the harbor, where they boarded an 1890 steamship called the Kalawai and began filming. This was a time when many people kept diaries, so I'll quote from them. Okay, Aline McMahon, quote, "On our second night at sea, after shooting 2 days, Tay Garnett, Frank McHugh, and Warren Heimer swooped down upon me in my cabin and dragged me to the card room where there's a piano, and they staged the grandest show I'd ever seen. Everyone was a little drunk, except me, but the show was a marvel, with Frank singing a song about the Monongahela River country where we both came from," end quote. All right, Kay Francis wrote, "Bill Powell and I got cockeyed in my dressing room waiting to shoot." McMahon wrote, "I just watched 4 days of rushes. I'm not so good except for one scene. All the rest are poor and I'm badly lit. Having the director drunk every day did not improve things." End quote. Francis wrote, "Bob Curl, the cameraman, took so much time and trouble shifting his camera 50 ways, experimenting with light and shadow. When I saw my close-ups, I felt the one pang of pure pleasure I've ever experienced in looking at myself on the screen," end quote. Sad to say, both Curl and writer Joe Jackson died before the film was released.
Wow. Curl
died of an infection, and Jackson drowned at Laguna Beach in, what do you call it, Riptide. He got pulled by Riptide. And his 2 friends, one of whom was the actor Robert Armstrong of King Kong fame, tried to save him, but the tide was too strong. In happier news, One-Way Passage, which cost $350,000, grossed $1.1 million, and Robert Lord won an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. And obviously, Tay Garnett did not share that honor. Lord went on to write Convention City and to produce In a Lonely Place. He did many distinguished films. Tay Garnett directed The Postman Always Rings Twice, which a major cornerstone of film noir. Kay Francis's next film was the Ernst Lubitsch masterpiece Trouble in Paradise. And last but not least, William Powell found superstardom at MGM in the Thin Man series. And that's all he wrote.